human rights celebration, and it's a place where we honor not only the human rights essay contest winners, but also lift up the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which for even after 18 years, many people still don't know about those declarations. So it's always a time for education and discussion and inspiration, so we are definitely glad that you are here today. The history of the St. Louis Coalition for Human Rights again started almost 20 years ago out of a project called Bringing Human Rights Home. And that's because in the U.S., sometimes we think human rights abuses happen outside of the U.S., but oftentimes they happen right here in front of our very eyes, and sometimes we are human rights abusers. And the only way that we are not human rights abusers if we know what those human rights are. And we've often been told by Anita Kessler, who's no longer with us, she was a long time and faithful committee member, that human rights are not like laws. You know, they're not like policies. You were born with them, they're indivisible, they're inalienable, so they can't be traded, they can't be bought, and you die with them. So that means nobody can take them from you. It's not like a law where they can be rescinded or revoked or another law replace that. Human rights are for all time, everywhere you go in the world. So just remember that. Our committee that plans this every year is teachers, professors, folks who are concerned about literacy, but all of us are glued together by the fact that we need to bring human rights not just to our community, but particularly to the young people, because they're going to be the ones who sort of shape and continue to mold this world in a new kind of way. The way that we select the topics each year, we kind of look at what's going on in the community, what are young people talking about, thinking about, and really try to give them a place for their voices to be heard. One of the things that was interesting, that some of us are connected with school districts, that we were finding that school districts, unfortunately, were suppressing the voices of kids around the whole Ferguson issue. Of course it's a difficult issue, of course it's a challenging issue to talk about, but young people wanted to talk about this. And they were told by teachers and administrators, we're not going to talk about that here. And of course I'm a former classroom teacher, that's just not the way that I believe you learn about issues in the world. So it made it this year even more meaningful to have the issue of police practices and police procedures, particularly that affect young people, be the theme. And so the thing that was selected this year was our police department policies and procedures in violation of citizens' human rights. And so we have selected 3 panelists that we think can adequately, more than adequately, talk about them. They have been involved in the Ferguson work. And as I call their name, I would like for them to come to the front and be seated. The first is the very Reverend Mike Kinman, and he's the Dean of St. Louis Christ Church Cathedral. And Reverend Kinman, his church has been one of the institutions that many in the social justice community look to for venue space. And my first encounter with Christ Church Cathedral was that's the place that we ended up after the Martin Luther King March every year until we outgrew it. So thank you for making this space available. You made it available during the national mobilization for Ferguson, and they have just always opened up their doors. And Reverend Kinman being involved in various aspects of community issues. Next is Brittany Farrell. She's the co-creator of the video. She's one of the co-creators of Millennial Activists United, which is a group of young people that came together in the wake of the Mike Brown shooting. And so she's been one of the protesters out on the streets for 120 some odd days. So she definitely has a perspective to share with us. Last but certainly not least is Jonathan Pulpus. He's with Jonathan is with a group that also developed after the Mike Brown shooting called Tribe X. And the other interesting thing that you should know is, like, Jonathan was here last year as the first place winner of the essay contest. So he should be feeling right at home. In fact, might be recruiting him to be on the committee. So we got a panel here, and I just would like to